It's about 6:05. I'll call the meeting to order. Andy, roll call, please.
Directors Akbari.
Here.
Gunther.
Here.
Sethy.
Here.
Weed.
Here.
And Huang.
Here. Director Sethy, would you lead us in a salute to the flag?
I can do it because I don't have a cold. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next is public comments. Do I have any member of the public that wish to provide comment to the board? Seeing none, I will close the public comments, and let's move on to consent calendar. Do I have any director that wish to add items to the consent calendar?
I'll move to add items 5.1 through 5.5 to the consent calendar.
I will second.
Okay. Directors Akbari.
Aye.
Gunther.
Aye.
Sethy.
Aye.
Weed.
Aye.
And Huang.
Aye.
I'll move consent calendar as amended.
Second.
Okay. Directors Akbari.
Aye.
Gunther.
Aye.
Sethy.
Aye.
Weed.
Aye.
And Huang.
Aye. And let's move on to item 5.6. And I believe I have a director that may need to recuse himself.
5.6, I think I have to go. Alvarado Niles Pipeline Project?
Yep.
I'm going to have to recluse myself. My house is within 1,000 feet of the project, and in the interest of, I just have to recluse myself because of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gunther. All right, Mr. Shaver.
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, members of the board. Item 5.6 involves a resolution awarding construction contract for Phase 1 of the Alvarado Niles Pipeline Seismic Improvement Project, and this item will be presented by Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you and good evening. And I do have a short presentation on this topic, and while that presentation is coming up, I'll just read the beginning of the staff report. The Alvarado Niles Pipeline Seismic Improvement Project will improve the district's water transmission and distribution system reliability and enhance the Alvarado Niles Pipeline's ability to withstand seismic forces and liquefaction-induced ground deformation. The project will replace existing older asbestos cement and steel pipe of various diameters and is being implemented in 2 phases. Phase 1 includes the construction of approximately 3,900 linear feet of 14-inch diameter seismically designed welded steel pipe and approximately 4,800 feet of 16-inch diameter seismically designed welded steel pipe. 3 bids to perform the work were recently received, opened, and evaluated. The low bid contained 2 minor irregularities which may be waived. There's adequate funding in the approved 2-year budget for this expenditure, and the fiscal year 2021 budget will include amounts necessary to complete the project. The project, which is part of the district's main renewal and seismic upgrades program, was most recently reviewed with the Engineering and Information Technology Committee on January 15, 2020. This project will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 1.1, efficiently manage and maintain our infrastructure to ensure reliability.
Is your microphone on?
I believe it is. Am I not close enough?
No.
Yeah, now that's better.
Okay. Thought I had it timed just right. Very close.
Will the mouse advance it?
We're good.
Okay.
Can you maximize the screen? Okay, so I'm actually very excited to bring this project to the board tonight. This is a project that's been in the works for quite some time, and the board's been supportive of the various services and geotechnical explorations and setting up inspection services and so forth to make this happen. So this really reflects a milestone in our main renewal and seismic improvement program. So I'll just start out by mentioning that the Alvarado Niles pipeline was identified in our seismic vulnerability assessment from some years ago, and it's an important pipeline for the district, and this project will replace that existing pipeline, which I described as being consisting of several different sizes of pipe down to as low as 6 inches in diameter, and upgrading that pipeline to 14 and 16-inch diameter pipe, and importantly, thereby improving the hydraulic conductivity between the east and west sides of our system and the northern part of our service area, connecting our Patterson and Dakota reservoirs, and also indirectly our blending facility and desalination facility. So there'll be significant hydraulic improvements with the project. But importantly, a major point of this project is to improve the seismic reliability of water transmission and water service along this corridor. This pipeline runs through areas that are susceptible to liquefaction, and so as part of our seismic vulnerability analysis, one of the recommendations had to do with hardening our system along certain backbone corridors, and this is an important one of those. So the corridor that's served by the Alvarado Niles pipeline serves a number of important community facilities, including a number of elementary schools, the large James Logan High School, some medical clinics, dialysis center, and then also the City of Union City's facilities themselves. So this map shows that Alvarado Niles corridor, and if I can get my little, so this is Alvarado Niles Road, this is Highway 880, and this is Alameda Creek here. And, oops, let's try that again. And these are those civic facilities that I was talking about, or what we call critical facilities in terms of the planning that we do. This red line denotes the alignment of the Alvarado Niles pipeline replacement. So this project, as I mentioned, is being done in 2 phases. The first phase is shown here in blue, and you can see we're starting over here at Union City Boulevard. Sorry, and there's a segment that stops at the Union Pacific Railroad, and that's because we're still working on permitting for the Union Pacific Railroad crossing and design approval by the railroad, and so that piece will be included in Phase 2. There's also the section here leading up to the Caltrans right-of-way, and again, the Caltrans right-of-way will be included in Phase 2 because we're working still with Caltrans on design issues and permitting and so forth. And then we'll pick it up on the other side of 880, the east side, at Almaden, and follow down to Central Avenue. So that's Phase 1, and that's the item that's before the board tonight. We're expecting construction to begin later this spring and continue on through the fall of this calendar year. We're hopeful that construction will be complete around mid to late November. So Phase 2 is what's shown in red. Now again, Phase 2 is not before the board tonight, but this is just to show how it's all going to come together. Right now, we're targeting construction for Phase 2 starting the winter of 2021 to the summer of 2021. That again is contingent upon a number of permitting and design approval situations. So the photos on the right of this slide show generally the type of construction that will be happening. You can see it's a pretty large construction area. It would be a long linear construction project, a lot of activity and some large equipment. And what's not shown on those photos on the right is the type of working conditions it will be in, and it will be high traffic conditions, sometimes narrow streets, so that traffic controls and other measures to minimize the impact of the project are really important. So in terms of mitigating construction impacts, we've done a lot, and we continue to work on a lot. There'll be a good deal of customer outreach and customer notifications, individual customer notifications, prior to the project construction beginning, and then of course during construction prior to any outages of water service, and there will be some, and also if there's a need to terminate water service for an extended period, so say maybe 6 to 8 hours, there will be some situations, well not terminate, but to suspend water service for those periods. particularly with businesses, there's a lot of coordination that needs to be done with individual businesses, and so we're planning on doing that. I mentioned traffic controls and signage are going to be important for traffic flow through the area. We've been working with the City of Union City on those issues. And then through our work with the City of Union City, we have limits on construction work hours and specific restrictions related to the various schools along that corridor and when construction needs to be stopped for the day to accommodate school traffic. There are certain nights and weekends that are provided for in the construction contract, and the contractor has the option for some and will be required to do certain night and weekend work for other areas of the project. And of course, there's noise restrictions, dust control, and those sorts of mitigations as well. We've been coordinating with the City of Union City and lots of other agencies. We continue to coordinate with police and fire and AC Transit and New Haven Unified School District and USD and others. This is a seismic pipeline, seismically designed pipeline. It's designed per the American Lifeline Alliance design guidelines for underground pipelines in seismic situations. It's designed as a Class 3, which means it's a critical pipeline that needs to either remain in service following the design earthquake or at least be fairly quick to repair and get back in service. This is kind of the point of this project, is we have this corridor that we can restore service quickly following an earthquake and then use that as the beginning of service repairs that extend out away from the pipeline as we bring our customers back into water service. The pipeline was designed with a 975-year return period, and that's to do with the liquefaction potential in the area. Based upon the geotechnical evaluations that we've done, we expect from anywhere between 2 and 9 inches of vertical ground deformation following the big earthquake. Other design considerations include full penetration butt welded joints. It's got a heavy wall thickness to provide for additional strength and the ability to withstand the seismically induced forces. Flexible connections at service connections and service lines, and these are really where a lot of leaks might be expected to occur following an earthquake, so this provides some flexibility in those connections to minimize leaks. Pipe fuses at branch connections, essentially providing for the ability for differential settlement between this pipeline and the surrounding existing water system. And then the alignment, both vertical and horizontal, is designed so that there are very small deflections in the pipe, 5-degree angles, as standard as possible. And of course, we want the pipeline to last for a long time and provide that reliability well into the future, so it's got active impressed current corrosion control. So staff advertised the project for construction on December 19, and 3 bids were received and opened on January 23. The bid totals for purposes of comparison of proposals range from a low of $12,367,575 to a high of $17,975,650, including contingent items of work which may be added to the contract later by change order should they be required. The engineer's estimate for the work, including the contingent items, ranged from $12,500,000 to $14 million. The total low bid, excluding the contingent items, is $11,316,775. So there were 2 minor irregularities, and those involved the contractor omitting the printout of the contractor state license board printout, and information related to one of their subs wasn't included on the right form, but it was elsewhere in the bid. So those irregularities can be waived. So staff's recommendation is by motion, waive the 2 minor irregularities in the Garney Pacific bid, and 2, adopt a resolution awarding the Phase 1 construction contract for the Alvarado Niles Pipeline Seismic Improvement Project to Garney Pacific Incorporated in the amount of $11,316,775, job 21192. And I'll be happy to address any questions.
Questions or comments from the board?
I have a couple of questions and a comment. So On the first leg of the project on the west side of 880, are we working with Kaiser Hospital, which is at the end of the work here? Because that could become a major issue for the hospital.
So we are individually working with each business. For residential, we're generally doing notices beforehand and then during construction, but for non-residential service customers, we're working with them individually. And so and to the extent they have concerns over the timing of an outage, say, we will work with them on trying to schedule the outage to meet their needs as best we can.
The primary driveway into Kaiser Hospital is right at that intersection.
Okay,
That's what my concern is about.
Okay. So I'm not familiar exactly with that intersection, but if it's all the way at Union City Boulevard,
Yes.
we're actually starting the project a bit off of that intersection, further up Alvarado Nile, so we're not going all the way to the intersection, so it may not be an issue, but I'll have to look into that to be sure.
Okay. Second question, when we had the water main rupture, I think it was off Dyer
Mm-hmm.
In Union City, I went out there a couple times. That was really disruptive with all the daytime work that was occurring for the morning and evening commuters. Are we making any effort to do work at night or on the weekends? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so there are, of course, yes, we are. So nighttime work is allowed in the contract for the contractor can propose on nighttime work, but it has to be approved by the district in Union City. There are other areas that they'll be required to work at night. This is a tough corridor because it's a mix of both residential and non-residential. So non-residential, oftentimes, it's better for our customers and for the residents or for the citizens there to have the work take place at night. But for residential, it can be tough because then the work is happening outside their neighborhood at night, and there can be noise associated with this construction, noise and lights. So it is a balance, and so as we go, essentially we're working with the city of Union City to approve or establish the nighttime work as we go. And they want to keep it flexible too because they want to hear from their citizenry as to whether or not there are concerns as construction goes.
Yeah. When we went over, when we did the work on Washington Boulevard over 680 on the overpass, that helped out by doing it at night because so much of the commute traffic is trying to get on the freeway in the evening, right? So I would expect that when we do the overpass over 880, we would similarly try to coordinate things.
Yeah, and that very well may be a requirement by Caltrans. Usually those types of scenarios are easier to do night work in because there are no residential properties nearby.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's a little bit different. There will be traffic impacts associated with this project.
Yeah, okay. So I want to make a comment. It's really for the public benefit. I know the importance of this project to our, among the spine of our entire system, so I'm fully supportive of moving forward. But there's a cost factor here that everyone should recognize. When we were doing the seismic improvements, pretty much 2012 through 2014-16, we were able to bring in contractors at kind of in a recessionary period at really good prices. But right now, everybody's at full employment, right? And so when we could pay $1 million to $2 million a mile for work, here this is working out to about $3.5 million per mile.
Right.
And even the high bid was right around $5 million a mile, which I found kind of shocking. So these are not the same prices we were dealing with just a decade ago.
Right.
And if I could say, let's wait for a recession, that might be desirable, but we can't do this. do that. This is really high priority for the district.
Right.
To get moving on this project. So I just want to make that clear to the public. We do understand the costs here, that this is much higher than we've paid in the past, but that's the circumstances of the market.
Thank you, Director Sethy. Any other comments, questions,
Well,
Director Weed?
first with a comment, I encourage you to keep pressure on the railroad. I'm told they're understaffed. There's a project the city of Fremont has at Sullivan Underpass, was sitting there for 3 years while they've been waiting for the railroad to process their permit application. The city's getting a taste of their own medicine in this case, but the railroad can be challenging. The next question I have, the existing pipeline, will that be left in place and will remain operational?
So it will be left in place for the most part. There are certain segments that have to be actually removed to make way for the new pipeline. It's about 500 total feet over all this 8,700 feet or so. So it's a small amount, but there are a few segments that have to be physically removed. Where the pipeline has been cut, it'll be protected in place. There'll be a cap put onto the end of the main so that it can be reused in the future. As you know, one of the concepts for a potential future IPR facility is to make use of this pipeline to move that indirect potable reused treated water. So efforts have been made to try and preserve this pipeline the best we can so that it can be reused, yes.
So it'll be redundant. Okay. Fine. So it will not be shown as abandoned. We'll be able to.
It'll be shown as removed from service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
I had one quick question.
Director Akbari?
Going back to the night and weekend work, on a monthly basis for the residents who live in that area, about how many nights or weekends should they expect work to take place?
So the real number will depend on, as construction is going, it'll depend on what the city of Union City is willing to allow. I mean, really, that'll be the key. And so I can't give you a real number right now. It could be many, or it could be very few.
Okay.
So I do have a question relating to the traffic.
Yeah.
So is our plan flexible enough, and agreement with Union City flexible enough if we see unexpected traffic volume that we could perhaps be nimble enough to shift our work pattern?
So yes, the city of Union City kind of has jurisdiction over the traffic control plans. So our contractor is required to submit traffic control plans to the city of Union City, and they have the discretion to change those plans anytime they want, to require a detour. And we'll be working with the city of Union City staff the entire time. And so yes, the answer is yes. The flexibility can be there through the permitting process.
Okay, thank you. With that, do I have any questions, comments from the members of the public?
One quick comment, if I might.
Director Wee?
Encourage you to look at acoustic monitors for new pipelines. It's one of the technologies that's promoted at some of the meetings I've been to, and to see it would be an additive item and would not impact the overall project. But it might, had we had them, we might have been able to detect that major failure we had earlier on Niles Alvarado.
Thank you, Director Wee. With that, do I have a motion from the board?
I'll make the motion to move to staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther, Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
All right.
and Huang.
Aye. And would someone please go retrieve Director Gunther? And when he comes back.
Yep.
Okay. You can hear Director Akbari?
Oh.
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay.
All right. With Director Gunther is back, we are moving on to item 5.7. And then I believe I have another director.
Yes. I will, on advice from council, I will recuse myself from item 5.7. It relates with a change order, and the original contract fell within the 1,000 feet of a property interest that I have. So.
Thank you. All right, General Manager.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 5.7 involves the authorization of change order for the Canyon Heights Tank Improvement Project. And once again, Mr. Stevenson will be presenting this item.
Indeed. The Canyon Heights Tank Improvement Project includes the removal and replacement of the interior tank coating, installation of new tank cathodic protection components, installation of site safety upgrades, and temporary improvements at the tank site and the Canyon Heights booster station necessary to facilitate the work. During the work on the tank interior, it was determined that the components of the roof and the roof support system had deteriorated and replacement is necessary. There's adequate funding in the current fiscal year capital improvement program budget for this expenditure. This project will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 1.1, efficiently manage and maintain our infrastructure to ensure reliability. So I just wanted to briefly provide the board some additional information here. As I think you know, the project purpose is to, primary purpose is to replace the coating on the tank, but it also includes other site enhancements and safety improvements, including installation of the guardrail that you see up there on top of the tank, new cathodic protection components, also spot repairs to certain interior and exterior components of the tank and the coating. And then in order to do all that work, you have to drain the tank, which means installation of temporary tanks up on top of the hill and improvements to the booster station at the bottom of the hill. So all that was part of the project from the beginning. And the work's been going on for some time, primarily on the outside of the tank. Now, when the construction crews entered the inside of the tank to start stripping the old coating off and preparing it for the new coating, this is what they saw. You can see there's a good deal of corrosion. There's rust up on the roof panels and on those rafter beams. You kind of have this view looking up toward the roof in that photo. And then as the coating was being stripped off, we began to find that there's a significant corrosion occurring primarily on those rafter beams and primarily near the roof center vent. So that photo that you're looking at, the large one on the upper left, is where the roof rafter beams all come together at that circular, what's called a dollar plate. And you can see on those beams there's a significant amount of corrosion happening. In fact, the lower right photo is a picture of one of those beams where the corrosion has gone all the way through the beam itself, and there's not much strength left in that web of that beam. And then at the bottom photo, you can see, it's kind of difficult to see, but there's a couple of little, they're about dime-sized holes in the tank panel, the roof panel itself, near the center vent. So these are certainly situations that show once that coating was removed, a lot of corrosion that had occurred was exposed. And so clearly staff looked at that and said, this thing needs to be fixed now before it's recoated and put back into service. So change order number 1 has been prepared, and that involves a temporary roof support system and then replacing portions of those roof panels. About 20 segments, small segments of the roof panels need to be replaced. Removing the existing rafter members and then furnishing 28 new rafter members and the associated hardware. Shop coating the rafter members and installing the new rafter members after properly coating the interior roof panels and the rafters themselves. So staff worked with the contractor to quickly develop an approach to have this work done, and negotiated the change order, including the scope and schedule, and has the following recommendation. By motion, approve change order number 1 in the amount of $231,579.60, which includes a time extension of 42 calendar days to Blocka Construction Incorporated for the Canyon Heights Tank Improvements Project, Job 21120. I'll be happy to address any questions.
Any questions or comments from the directors?
I got a couple questions. Ed, when was the last time we painted this tank? Do you remember?
This is the original tank coating from the year 2000 when the tank was built.
2000.
Yeah.
have we found similar corrosion like this in some of the other tanks, or is this the first time we've gone into something that was coated about this time frame?
Yeah, this is the only tank that we have that has this particular coating system. This coating system was relatively new at the time it was installed. It was shortly after the Air Resources Board regulations changed and changed the types of coating systems that can be used.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
But that's not to say that we don't have corrosion occurring on other tanks.
No,
but this is a special situation.
Yeah, this is not unheard of.
No, this is what happens when the regulations change and the coating manufacturers come out with new formulas, and typically it takes a number of years until they adapt to the new regulations and develop a coating system that's robust.
Thank you.
Director Wee?
I have an email I received from one of the vendors says advertising a drone monitoring system for tanks where they can fly in that little space between the water and the top to inspect.
Yeah, we've seen that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's exciting. Any other comments from Director? If not, any question or comments from the public?
I'll move staff recommendation.
No, okay, thank you.
Second.
Okay, Directors Akbari, Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. Would someone please go get Director Akbari?
Let drone hang.
It's almost like there was an amount of corrosion that you would expect if it wasn't coated at all. I mean,
Paint systems back then.
I know. All right, moving on to item 5.8, please.
yes, thank you. 5.8 involves the authorization for agreement for consulting services
Yeah, paint is
For
very important on the
a
show.
district-wide classification and compensation study. And leading us through this journey will be Jennifer Solito, our Human Resources Manager.
Thank you. Good evening. So the item before your board is a proposed contract to conduct a comprehensive district-wide classification and compensation study. The study will include a complete review of all district classification descriptions, updating them for industry best practices and current functions, as well as a complete total compensation survey and associated recommendations. As background, the district has 157 unique job classifications and associated salary ranges, and approximately 95 actual written job descriptions that represent those classifications, including career tracks that are shared in a single class. The classifications were last reviewed and updated in 2012 for represented or union classifications and 2014 for unrepresented positions. However, at that time, some classifications were not reviewed, or they were drafted but never finalized, and we still have some that might be in use but are missing. So it's time for us to kind of do that comprehensive review. So the study will occur over two phases. Phase 1 would be the classification portion, and Phase 2, the total compensation study. So as part of Phase 1, the study would involve looking at every single district classification, all our documents, updating and creating descriptions to accurately reflect job titles, job definitions, duties, knowledge, skills, and abilities, minimum qualifications, and essential physical functions. Following the update of the description, Phase 2 would kick in, which would be to conduct the comprehensive total compensation survey, including a review of our current comparator agencies that we use to benchmark to, and recommending potentially adopting some new comparator agencies. It's anticipated that Phase 1 and 2 would both be complete by December. However, if amendments are proposed to represented classifications, as well as any changes to those comparator agencies we use in our compensation surveys, those pieces would be subject to meet and confer with the applicable union group. So that could extend the timeline some amount of time. However, the timeline does line up nicely because we anticipate starting negotiations with both of our unions for new contracts around the fall. And that's why we like to start the study now, get all that data, all the classes, the total compensation survey that we would then roll in to the negotiation process. And we typically would do a total compensation survey anyway as part of our prep for negotiations. So this will just allow a little bit of a deeper dive and a third-party recommendation as well.
I want to make a quick comment. It seems like the microphones on that side of the room are not working. because not working like normal.
I would lean in more to the microphone. That would help.
No, but I think they're set low or something.
Yeah, I think
It doesn't seem like normal for a
Yes,
meeting here.
certainly some adjustment is still required. So
All right.
your tolerance is appreciated.
Yeah, but in
Let
the
us speak
interest
up a little
of getting a good recording for loading the meeting onto our web, please just get a little bit closer.
I would lean in very closely.
And we'll try to project.
Okay, I'm projected. So staff released an RFP to solicit consultants that are well-versed in these types of studies and with background into industry best practices, as well as specifically option around compensation administration, because we haven't looked at that in a while. And following a review of 5 responsive proposals, the vendor before you, Ralph Anderson and Associates, were selected based on their qualifications, industry-specific experience with government and special districts, and approach to the scope of work. The total anticipated cost of the project, including Phase 1 and 2, is approximately $91,000. This will be a large initiative with district-wide impact, as each employee will be tasked with participating in the review and discussion of their applicable job class. Some of the challenges we expect include impact on staff time and resources, since everyone would be tasked in participating. Likely some concerns around general staff expectations and regarding potential reclassifications and impacts on compensation, as well as varying levels of agreements with whatever the outcome is of the study. We also estimate that defining the comparator agency labor market, as well as agreement on benchmark match classifications, may be a point of debate with the unions. There are also potential implementation costs associated with any compensation structure changes. So the ultimate goals of the project are to ensure all our job classifications accurately reflect the duties and requirements of each position, and that each employee is appropriately classified and compensated according to their duties. We also hope to ensure alignment with industry best practices in personnel management, as well as ensuring that the district's class and comp structure reflect industry best practices and meet the needs of the district to attract, recruit, retain, and engage a qualified workforce. I'd also like to make a point of clarification that this study will just be sort of a snapshot in time. It's going to look at what we are doing today and accurately reflect that back to us. So it is not an organizational design study. It's not going to make recommendations for restructuring, reorganizations, levels of staffing, number of staff, anything like that. Staff may be impacted by changes in their job descriptions, but wherever possible, there may be impacts of total compensation survey, and that will be subject to subsequent negotiations with each employee group. But other than that, there should be no major staff impacts. We're not looking at layoffs, cutting positions, anything like that. So this item is being brought before the board for discussion because it has such district-wide impact, and you will see more items about this. So any changes to salaries and titles would have to be publicly adopted by your board, the salary schedule, and then you will be hearing probably a lot about this when we get into negotiations, as this will feed into our bargaining process. So I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Questions or comments, Director Lee?
At the Finance Committee, I had requested that we look at the interns and the intern structure that we have and how we might be able to embellish that.
And that will be included, job class.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the directors?
None.
None? Any members of public? Questions, comments? No? All right. With that, do I have a motion?
I'll move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. Item 5.9?
Thank you, Madam President. Item 5.9, staff will be requesting the board to consider updating the Help on Tap eligibility guidelines and amending the district's rate and fee schedule. And beginning this item will be Manager of Finance, Jonathan Wunderlich.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Shaver. The board implemented the Help on Tap Low-Income Rate Assistance Program in March of 2017 with income guidelines based on the federal poverty level, or FPL. At the January 2020 board meeting, staff received direction to review program income guidelines and develop a proposal to increase the eligibility threshold. Staff reviewed other assistance programs and identified 2 models for increasing the income threshold. 1, maintaining FPL as the benchmark, but increasing the percentage of FPL eligible for the program, or 2, benchmarking program income guidelines against a percentage of area median income, or AMI. Staff found that benchmarking against a percentage of AMI would facilitate greater participation in the Help on Tap program and would also be consistent with other East Bay Water Agency's LIRA programs. This item was reviewed with the Finance Committee on January 21, 2020, and will be supplemented by a staff presentation. Approval of this item will help achieve Strategic Plan Goal 5, communication, promote clear and open communication, outreach, and engagement with customers and communities. The recommendation on this item is by motion, adopt a resolution amending the rate and fee schedule to set Help on Tap program income guidelines at 50% of area median income. With us this evening is Ethan Birch, our Help on Tap program administrator, to provide a presentation to provide a little more background on the Help on Tap program, as well as the differences between FPL and area median income and how these changes might affect program participation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Birch.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Ethan Birch. I'm the Help on Tap program administrator. I've been in this role for about 2 years.
Ethan, can you get a little bit closer?
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is a program that brings me great personal and professional satisfaction, and I enjoy administering it. I think it's a program of great value to the district and to our customers in the community. As part of my role, I have been able to participate in interagency discussions around water affordability, which have informed my work on the program and the recommendations I'm going to make tonight. So as aforementioned, the Help on Tap program is our low-income rate assistance, or LIRA program. It provides a $25 bi-monthly credit towards the service charge, and only direct ACWD customers are eligible. This means that customers who live in master metered housing are not eligible for the program. This means that the 834 active accounts represent roughly 9% of the population currently eligible under the program guidelines. It's about 9,300 households. That number was reached because we have roughly 35% of our units are master metered, and so the total population under the income limit was then, was 35% was subtracted out. So the current income guidelines are, as shown here, ranging from $33,820 all the way up to $69,180 for a family of 6. The average applicant household size is 2.24, so the vast majority of our customers are in those first 2 categories. There are 2 primary income limit methodologies used in low-income rate assistance programs across the state of California. The first one and most common is the federal poverty level, or a percentage thereof. Most agencies use something around 200%. And this is set by the Census Bureau and U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The other commonly used metric, although less commonly used, is area median income, which is a more localized standard that is set by Housing and Urban Development and is often used in housing programs. So this is typically maintained city by city by the local housing authority. So agencies in our area use both. SFPUC, on whose program we drew some inspiration from when we created our own, they use 200% of the federal poverty level, whereas East Bay Municipal Utility District and Contra Costa Water District both use 50% of AMI. I've provided a chart comparing what 50% AMI would look like versus 250% of the federal poverty level, which would represent an increase from our current standard. So as you can see, at the smaller household size, 50% of area median income is much more generous, whereas in larger households, 250% of the federal poverty level is more generous. However, as I mentioned, most of our customers that apply for the program are in smaller households, and I think, therefore, based on the results we've had with the program so far, 50% AMI would capture a larger percentage of our customers. And then I've estimated the program costs at 50% AMI. Now, I have not prepared an estimate at 250% of the federal poverty level simply because the data reported by the American Community Survey falls sort of in between 200% of the federal poverty level and 50% AMI, or rather, it falls at 50% AMI and 200% of the federal poverty level. So we can't estimate 250% because it falls between these two, but we can safely say that it's less than 50% AMI. So any costs reflected here, this represents what we would expect to be the upper bound of costs associated with an increase to 50% of the area median income for a variety of reasons. Largely is that we cannot effectively estimate precisely the number of our customers that live in multifamily housing. We assume that that number is higher at lower income levels than it is at higher income levels, and therefore that 35% that we estimate across the board is likely low, right? It's likely even fewer customers than we estimate are actually eligible for the program, but we just went with a flat number to be safe. So what this chart then is showing is the 9% participation illustrated on the left. That's our current level of participation. That's around the number that we have hovered at the entire time since we rolled the program out after the initial ramp-up period. In my conversations with other agencies, that number is fairly standard. It's 9-10% seems to be the participation level that most agencies are able to get. However, because it would be irresponsible not to look at the costs if we had, a wonderful participation percentage beyond 9%, I've shown the additional costs. The column all the way on the right, the total annual cost, represents the current cost of the program at 9% plus any additional participation. So there's about 4,500 additional households that would become eligible if we assume that 35% in multifamily housing holds true. So I've shown all the way up to if 50% of those 4,500 joined the program, what the costs would be. We would guess that it would be somewhere between 9 and 15%. And the cost.
Can I jump in with
Yeah,
a quick question? Would there be any households who are currently eligible that would no longer be eligible? Because, if you, going by the 50% guideline compared to our current guideline, if you have, I think, over 8 people in your household, then you might currently be eligible but would no longer be eligible with the 50% guideline. So do we have any households?
To my knowledge, there are no households that are large enough that they would fall off of the program.
Okay.
Obviously, so there are people who would currently be eligible but might not be on the program who would no longer be eligible.
Okay.
But I can check and find out what the exact, or like what the largest household on the program is. But most of our applicants are much smaller households.
Okay.
So any changes to the income guidelines would be accompanied by additional outreach. Some of these are things that we've done before, but we would do another round of to make our partners throughout the community aware that the income guidelines have changed. One of our most impactful partners has been the Fremont Family Resource Center. I've had a lot of applications that have come by way of the Fremont Family Resource Center. So we would make sure that any changes we made would be updated with them as well. We would get fresh applications out into the community. And then we would of course update the website and things of that nature as well. So once again, the staff recommendation is by motion, adopt a resolution amending the rate and fee schedule to set Help on Tap program income guidelines at 50% of area median income. Happy to take any questions.
Questions or comments from the directors?
I have a couple. Go ahead, John.
We hope over time we can come up with even a more simplified approach, which gives a zero tier, which did not charge the first 2 units of water per month. And then, so we get out of the administrative costs and make it more universal. And also develop a special program, a rate structure for HOAs and apartment complexes, which we have sub-metering in, which would be able to reach those people directly with an appropriate ratio of fixed cost and commodity cost. Thank you.
Director Sethy.
Yeah. Director Weed and I were exposed to a couple of programs on our recent Cal DSAL conference where they have a health and safety pricing for the lowest tier to help benefit people that are in the low-income groups. Just that's as a comment. Question, is it feasible to have a person qualify on either standard? That we would use either one? This is kind of building off of Director Akbari's question.
Director Sethy just asked my question.
So, to clarify, do you mean for the higher income or the larger household sizes, we would use 200% of the federal poverty level, or for lower household sizes?
Why don't we just say if you qualify on either basis, you qualify for us, not so that we're not choosing one or the other.
And are we talking about 200% of the federal poverty level or 250%?
250 versus.
It's certainly feasible. It would increase the cost estimate significantly. Although again, we can't really say how significantly, but it would essentially just be raising the income limit in the larger household sizes. But as administratively, I don't see that it would be a huge issue. We would find the point where they cross and adopt the one for the household sizes beyond that and the other for household sizes below that.
Well, this is just my opinion. I don't know if it's shared by the other directors here, but I would encourage us just to say, if you are applying to our Help on Tap program, you have one of two ways to qualify, and we'll accept either one.
I'm sure there is a way for us to do that without too much of administrative hassle.
Yeah, I think if we were to take that approach, we would need to amend the resolution before the board to say that the income guideline is set at the greater of 50% of area median income or 250% of the federal poverty level. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that would be a problem for us to administer the program in that way. I don't think, and in terms of the cost estimate, it's pretty unusual to see family sizes of 6, 7, 8 people, especially at the income levels that would qualify. So I don't think there would be a meaningful cost increase from that approach.
I understand that. Yep. So my only comment is that I think it was Director Weed and I years ago that really pushed to have the Help on Tap program through the Finance Committee. But while we are approving the guidelines for qualification tonight, I'm hoping that after we see some adjustment in participation rates, that we can again take a look at increasing the dollar amount of what we offer customers. So right now it's at $25. Let's see how many new people participate in the program, and then maybe we can adjust that up to $30 or $35, something like that. And lastly, I just want to emphasize for the public that under Prop 218, we are not permitted to have a certain class of customers subsidize another class of customers. So we have developed this program based on non-water revenues that the district receives from certain things like cellular towers and things like that on our properties. So I would encourage us just to move forward. And thank you, Ethan, for all the work that you're doing, too.
Director Gunther?
Okay, well, our Director Sethy pretty much said what I had to say. So I do fully support the concept of the dual approach. I also support the concept of once the dust settles, maybe we could review the amount. So with that, I just like to say I support that process as well. We didn't talk even before the meeting.
Director Akbari?
I'm supportive of the proposal that Director Sethy suggested as well. Just to get some clarification, so I think I was comparing the 50% AMI to our current guidelines, which are 200% of the federal poverty level. But if we're going with the 250%, the convergence is at a household size of 4. Would that, in your experience, meaningfully increase the pool that would be eligible under that program?
There are certainly more households with 4 people than 6 people on the program. I can't tell you off the top of my head exactly how many. As I mentioned, the average household size is 2.24. So that's where the vast majority of our customers have been, is 1 or 2 person households.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. Just to round out the comment, I'm still supportive of that. I like the idea of us going with a dual approach and using the 250% along with the 50% of AMI. So I'll vote for that resolution.
Director Weed, additional comment?
As I understand, we're well within our financing capabilities to cover this with non-revenue fees. But I would ask for, if we could make sure we have clarification, that fees we receive from penalties for late payments, et cetera, are not covered by the Prop 218 and could be used to cover a Help on Tap program, which gives us a much greater dollar amount that we can eventually use on Help on Tap.
So I assume staff's not quite ready to answer that question tonight, and would you like to get back to us?
What staff's recommendation is for the board to go ahead and consider this one variable. What we don't know is how many additional households will sign up for the program. Staff agrees with the comments that were made this evening by several directors that we'll just tweak one dial. We'll see the outcome, and then obviously we'll bring back the Help on Tap program with more ideas on where we could possibly go with this in about a year or so.
Yeah, the question you've asked is not relevant to this tonight. As we look at the program and if there's additional need for funds, then we will need to look at where those funds come from.
Right, so, but our recommendation is what we're doing is a cautious approach. We don't have really super data on what the additional costs would be. Let's see what happens, and then we can go from there.
And that was just my comment. So we have the funding for the proposal tonight.
Based on our projections, we have.
Okay.
And that there may be other sources of funding.
Right, and I'm sure as we tweak the program, we'll deal with that. And actually, that discussion answered my question. I was going to ask, can we actually afford this program, since the income stream is very limited for this program?
Yeah, so this proposal is well within the bounds of the funding we have set aside for this program.
All right, thank you. So with that, I am hearing that potentially the board has a modified recommendation?
Yeah, I will move to approve the staff recommendation if somebody can restate the amended.
Sure. I'll take a stab at that. So the revised recommendation is for the board to adopt a resolution amending the rate and fee schedule to set the Help on Tap income guidelines at the greater of 50% of the area median income or 250% of the federal poverty level.
All right. Do I hear a motion from
I'm recommending that
Director
motion.
Sethy?
Second.
Okay. And we would make the appropriate changes to the resolution that you will be adopting, and just that change that Mr. Wondorf mentioned will be identified in both the recitals and in the action clause, and we'll take care of that resolution.
Thank you.
Is the word greater the right word here?
Yes, it's because you'll be found eligible as long as your income is below whichever one is higher based on your household size.
Okay.
And as Director Akbari noted, that transition point will be a 4-person household. So if you're a 3-person or smaller household, you'll be found eligible up to the 50% of area median income. For a 4-person or larger household, it will be based on 250% of the federal poverty level.
So we have a
A motion and a second.
Director Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. Thank you, and this is fairly creative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, with that, item 5.10.
Thank you, President Huang. The last three items will be presented by Manager of Water Resources, Laura Heides, and the first of those three, item 510, involves the delivery of groundwater monitoring report and survey report and adoption of resolutions relating to the Replenishment Assessment Act.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. I'm pleased to be here to share this first item that you see each February. So as required by the Replenishment Assessment Act of the Alameda County Water District, Replenishment Assessment Act, the district must prepare an engineering survey and report on groundwater conditions, and the board must adopt the necessary resolutions of intent on or before the second Tuesday of March as prerequisites to a public hearing, which must be held on the second Tuesday of April. The purpose of the public hearing is to allow public comment on both the survey report and the proposed replenishment assessment rate. The survey report includes a recommendation for a 5.4% increase in the replenishment assessment rate for groundwater pumped or extracted for other than agricultural and municipal recreational purposes effective on July 1st, 2020. This proposed increase is subject to public notification requirements that were established through Proposition 218. This recommendation is based on projected activities needed to sustain the groundwater basin in fiscal year 2020-21, with consideration of groundwater levels and quality documented in the 2019 Groundwater Monitoring Report. Approval of this item is consistent with Strategic Plan Goal 2.1, maintain and enhance sustainability and reliability of local and regional water supplies, and Strategic Plan Goal 3, improve the district's financial stability and transparency. So tonight's recommendation is to receive the 2019 Groundwater Monitoring Report and the survey report on groundwater conditions, February 2020. And by motion, 1, adopt a resolution declaring the board's intention to continue use of replenishment assessment revenue to fund a portion of groundwater basin costs in fiscal year 2020 and 21, setting April 14th, 2020 at 6:00 p.m. as the date and time for a public hearing for consideration of the proposed increase to the replenishment assessment, and directing staff to mail to owners and operators of wells that would be subject to the replenishment assessment notification of the proposed increase and public hearing details. And 2, adopt a resolution extending the deadline for installation of measuring devices on certain non-metered wells. And with that, I'm happy to address any questions.
Questions or comments from the board? Nope.
None for me.
All right. And any question or comments from members of the public? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay. Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. Item 511, please.
5.11 is asking for the authorization of a planning agreement to form the San Francisco Bay Area Advanced Quantification Precipitation Information System Project Local Partner Agencies Committee.
The acronym?
And again, this will be Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. The San Francisco Bay Area Advanced Quantitative Precipitation Information System Project, or AQPI project, is a California Department of Water Resources grant-funded program developed in collaboration with federal, state, and local entities to enhance rainfall detecting radar coverage over the San Francisco Bay Area. The AQPI project will provide the district with enhanced rainfall predictions and finer resolution of rainfall data over the Alameda Creek watershed, benefiting district groundwater recharge activities by allowing district staff to be more proactive and informed when responding to rainfall events. As part of the AQPI project's network of 5 radar installations, the district is participating with the lead agency, Sonoma County Water Agency, or Sonoma Water, and other partner agencies in the temporary installation and operation of 1 X-band radar unit to be located in the East Bay. Partner agencies for the East Bay radar unit have worked with agencies installing other AQPI radar units across the Bay Area to develop a regional planning agreement to form the San Francisco Bay Area
Advanced Quantification Precipitation Information System Project Local Partner Agencies Committee, and this is we're calling a planning agreement. The planning agreement documents the agency's intent to work together toward a future long-term agreement that would establish a long-term funding and governance plan to ensure the continued operations of the AQPI project after 2021. Board authorization of this planning agreement will help further the district's strategic plan goal 2.1, maintain and enhance sustainability and reliability of local and regional water supplies, and goal 2.3, evaluate new and innovative water management concepts. So tonight's staff recommendation is by motion, authorize the general manager to enter into a planning agreement to form the San Francisco Bay Area Advanced Quantification Precipitation Information System Project Local Partner Agencies Committee. And I'm happy to address any questions.
Questions or comments from the board?
One.
Sure.
You want to go first?
Director Wee?
Well, the risk of being considered facetious, it might give us more warning to the East Bay Regional Park District when their facilities will be flooded out at Del Valle Reservoir.
Director Sethy?
I was at the unveiling ceremony representing the board, along with Mr. Shaver, and I just had a quick question about the Expand technology here. Do we actually get some kind of internet feed with all the data and the imaging from this technology where we can actually see it in action?
So that's a good question, and there is it's a whole collaboration that involves universities and other experts on this, and so they are working on my understanding is they're working on getting the data and then working with us on how best we can receive the data and use it for our own purposes. So some of those details are all still being worked out, and we're hoping through this local area planning committee, that'll be sort of a forum where people can also discuss how best to make that all happen.
I think it would be really cool if we had a flat panel display someplace in the district where you had a constant feed and you could actually see what's going on, you know, when a storm comes in or something, where there's an atmospheric river that you can track. One thing I learned about this technology, which was quite informative, was I thought it was mostly tracking the high atmospheric rivers, but it's actually looking at a micro level of precipitation really within our microclimates around the Bay Area. So I found that really fascinating. And if we had some kind of feed, I would just think that'd be a real treat to have here in the district.
Thank you. Director Gunther?
Actually, kind of always playing on that. I'm assuming that the cities may have access to this data as well, particularly in regards to traffic and the concepts of, I don't know how much this is going to allow us to feed into Niles Canyon, but it's very susceptible to slides from, not to mention Mission Boulevard area, from slides from these main downpours, per se. There's a lot of possible useful information for the cities as well. Just curious, not to mention 880 where it floods out.
Yeah, a good question, and that's one thing. Right now, I'm not sure that any of the local cities are involved, but I believe a lot of the regional flood control agencies are involved, and that's one thing I know that our internal team has mentioned that they're trying to share also with the wider group, the transportation impacts, and there's a lot of other applications that this can be used for, so they're trying to get enough momentum to get it up and running and working to really demonstrate the benefits. So hopefully long-term we can use it for all those purposes.
Yeah, if I may, you know, this effort is being led by the water agencies and, as Laura mentioned, the stormwater agencies as well. The hope is that ultimately we can persuade the National Weather Service to assume the operation and maintenance of the system and those associated costs. And because there is an understanding that the benefits are going to potentially be much broader than just the water sector.
I mean, we washed a train a few years ago in Alameda Creek.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been a lot worse. And it was totally unforeseen. I I mean, they never would have saw that.
Mhm.
It was a landslide. Yeah.
No? Okay. With that, question or comments from the public? No? Okay. Do I have a motion from
I'll
the
move
board?
staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. Item 512, please.
Yes, the last of the action items for the board this evening is a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement with the state water contractors for the 2020 dry year water transfer program. And again, this will be Laura presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Due to the shift toward dry hydrologic conditions, the State Water Contractors is coordinating a dry year water transfer program to purchase dry year supplies in 2020. The purpose of the program is to provide a means for water agencies, including the district, to purchase dry year supplies to supplement other available supplies. Execution of the 2020 dry year water transfer agreement with the state water contractors will allow the district to participate in the program and potentially purchase dry year supplies should conditions remain dry and the district decides to secure additional water supplies through the program. There is adequate funding in the fiscal year 2019-20 budget to cover the costs of this agreement. Board authorization of the agreement will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 2.1, maintain and enhance sustainability and reliability of local and regional water supplies. And just to add before sharing the recommendation, staff plans to bring a full water supply update to the board at the March meeting. And this item is coming to the board in advance of that update in order to meet some of the participation deadlines and to proactively plan for the possibility of continued dry conditions. So tonight's recommendation is by resolution, authorize the general manager to execute the State Water Contractors 2020 Dry Year Water Transfer Agreement for an amount not to exceed $50,000 for a deposit and administrative costs for the potential purchase of up to 10,000 acre-feet from the 2020 Dry Year Water Transfer Program. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments from the board? Director Weed?
Comment, supportive of the proposal. I received one correspondence which expressed concerns from Santa Clara Valley Water District that which is also has water storage at Semi-Tropic, that the Sigma implementation may have placed our ability to acquire water from Semi-Tropic at a much lower priority, and their concern was that it was putting it in jeopardy to be able to get a timely deliveries from Semi-Tropic. So if this can help offset that, that would be a good thing.
So I had a couple of questions here related to what Director Weed is bringing up. If we do dry water transfers, this is among state water contractors or DWR and ourselves, is that correct?
This would be through, and this is a program that the State Water Contractors does almost every year. And they will go out and on behalf of a pool of state water contractors that decide to participate, they will look for water supplies available to transfer to those contractors.
Right. So from the current news, it looks like we're almost at drought levels again, or our lowest rainfall amounts. Would this include the water transfers like we did between Los Vaqueros Reservoir, Contra Costa Water District, and ourselves a few years back, the 5,000 acre-feet of water?
It's a similar concept through sort of a different route. And what we're asking the board to approve right now is just being able to participate in the program and potentially purchase up to 10,000 acre-feet. We would be coming back to the board to actually make that purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really a placeholder.
Yeah.
It's a different program altogether than the transfer that we did with Contra Costa Water District in the 2014-2015 time period. That was a one-off thing. As Ms. Hyde said, this is a sort of a routine program. Right now, the forecast for the balance of the winter is dry. So it's just really kind of an insurance policy And the way the State Water Contractors Program works is if agencies are interested in participating, they go in the market basically to rice farmers in the northern Sacramento Valley and pick up some water there. But, we're hoping that this isn't necessary or needed, but it's just an insurance policy. And the problem is that you have to commit before you know how the winter is going to turn out.
Right. So in terms of the water that we have banked away with semi-tropic, and I believe we're up to about 3.5, 4 years of water.
15 years. 50,000 acre feet.
That's one interpretation. Okay. But 3.5 to 4 years of what we consume as a community. We're not impeded in any way from transferring water back from semi-tropic.
No, at this time we would expect that we'd be able to return back our full amount that we're allowed to each year.
Yeah. So at the last Water Resources meeting that Director Gunther and I participated in, we had our water supply forecast. I don't recall seeing any water transfers back from semi-tropic. Do you anticipate that may change?
That may change. Our team, actually, between Water Resources and Operations, they've been meeting in the past week or so to start thinking about, given sort of the dry conditions, what kind of changes we might be making to our different supplies. And so we'll be providing an update at the next Water Resources meeting and then also at the March board meeting. And you probably will see some returns from semi-tropic and other changes to what we presented last month.
Okay, so I'm supportive of the agreement that we want to sign here. I also want to emphasize for the community, since we're going in, well, it appears that we're in another dry year. I don't want to say a drought, but a dry year. Our reservoirs are fairly full, so we don't have a big worry there. But I really would like the community to appreciate the fact that part of what they pay for in their rates is the investment that we've been making in our water bank. And we got down somewhat during the drought, but we've replenished all that back to about a 3.5, 4 year capacity of water, which is part of having water reliability for our community. And it does cost money. It's built into people's rates.
Thank you. Director Gunther?
Director Sethy said it very well. Thank you.
Director Akbari? No comment? Okay, with that, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay. Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethi,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. And with that, I would suggest we take a 10-minute break. How about that's come back at 7:35, according to that clock?
Okay. My understanding is we have
This would be reports. Board and committee reports. Do I have any questions or comments from the board on any of the board committee reports?
No.
Nope, seeing none, move to 6.2, operational reports. Do we have any questions or comments from the board on the operational reports?
Hardness looks good.
Uh,
Dan?
Union
Okay.
City looks like the best in years right now.
Yeah, we're doing pretty good over there.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, with that, then let's move, I see. No item 6.3, no staff presentation, then 6.4. General Manager's report, right?
Yeah, it's sort of a sneaky staff presentation under General Manager's reports. Item 6.4.1 is an update on the Delta Conveyance Project. And the genesis of providing this report for the entire board was a suggestion by Director Sethy that the board should receive some of the information that the Delta Conveyance Authority and Delta Conveyance Financing Authority folks have received. And so I thought that was a good idea, so it's on your agenda. And Laura, will you be presenting this?
All right, so tonight I'm just going to present a short update on the Delta Conveyance Project. We'll talk briefly about the notice of preparation recently put out, the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority activities, state water project cost and benefit negotiations, and also next steps for our agency. So first, the Delta Conveyance Notice of Preparation was put out by DWR on January 15th. Comments on this document are due on March 20th. And they've actually just recently added a scoping meeting, so they're having a total of 8 scoping meetings during February and March. And that's many of them in the Delta, but also one here in the Bay Area and one in Los Angeles as well. So many thanks to Director Sethy for presenting some oral comments at yesterday's meeting in San Jose. And they've been doing significant notification and outreach efforts to make folks aware that this document is being put out and that plans are progressing to look at the Delta Conveyance project and prepare environmental documents for it. They've sent out many, many letters. They're having the scoping meetings and just done significant outreach to a variety of different communities and trying to make the document available in libraries and places throughout the state. The document itself includes the project purpose, objectives, and description, and it can be accessed online at DWR's website, which I've listed here. And it's not a terribly long document. It's just 12-ish pages or so, if you'd be interested in looking through it. And just a few quick details so that you're aware. The proposed project is looking at up to a 6,000 CFS facility. DWR is considering alternatives in the range of 3,000 to 7,500 CFS size tunnel for the Delta Conveyance project. And they're also looking at alternatives with varying degrees of Central Valley project involvement or none at all. So the way the process works is following the NOP, the DWR would select the final choice of potentially feasible alternatives to include in the draft environmental impact report that they will prepare after receiving their scoping comments. So that's through the meetings and the letters that they'll receive by March 20th. So just so you can get a quick view of what the proposed project looks like, this is just a schematic from the notice of preparation itself that shows a single main tunnel being proposed with 2 potential optional corridors. You can see in sort of the yellow or orange color, that is a central tunnel corridor that is one option, and the second option being an eastern tunnel corridor closer to I-5, and that's shown in purple. The notice of preparation also includes mention of intakes, tunnel reaches and shafts, forebays, a pumping plant, and some south delta conveyance to connect it up with the existing state water project. Those are also included and described in the notice of preparation. So moving on briefly to Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority activities. The current focus of the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority has been a variety of things in recent months, but they've been doing a lot of program initiation activities, things like setting up their various processes for the business requirements of the agency and working on priority procedures to work toward their project management system and that sort of thing. They've also been doing a number of different engineering efforts focused more on foundational studies at this point and also support of the notice of preparation document and the facilities that were mentioned in that document. And also they've been doing a lot of support for the stakeholder engagement and outreach efforts. One of the big activities in recent months has been the formation of a stakeholder engagement committee. And this committee has been gathering to discuss the project and dive into the details of what's being looked at to gather stakeholder input. My understanding is it's been a very positive process that the stakeholders and representatives on the committee have been very engaged and having some very positive conversations about the project and facilities and potential mitigation and impacts. So They've got scheduled 2 meetings per month through May, and so that's going to be an ongoing effort. And all of those meetings are actually held in the Delta. You can watch them via live stream now, and then they also have videos online, and they're doing a lot of documentation of the meetings and have a variety of summaries and things on the website as well. The other focus of the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority itself is they are physically moving to a new office location. They were in with DWR so far, but are moving to a new location where they'll be able to function out of a new office. So that's exciting, happening this month. Their budget, as of January 2020 update, they had approved $82 million and had committed $72.6 million. Their estimate, what they call the estimate at completion for fiscal year 2019-20, is about $49 million, so they're not spending quite as much as originally planned. They've had some delays, so they do anticipate being under budget at the end of the fiscal year. They've had some delays in geotechnical work and such. So that is the story there. And they've got a very nice monthly report that they put out in their meeting materials that they share. It has a very detailed schedule. You can just see a snapshot of it down there on the right. And one of the big milestones they're working toward is what is called the alternative configuration and characteristics information that they hope to have available, which my understanding is they'll have more information about the different alternatives they're considering, and that'll help guide some of the future work and cost estimating. So if you're interested in seeing the details of all of what's going on, you can visit the website, www.dcdca.org, and there's a whole variety of information there about contracts and activities and various other things. So, and if you're interested, we can certainly email that out or share it after the meeting. And next, just a very brief overview of the State Water Project cost-benefit negotiations. So the purpose of these negotiations is to determine basic terms for a state water project contract amendment to equitably allocate costs and benefits of a potential Delta conveyance facility. These are public negotiations held between the public water agencies, or PWAs, that would be involved in the project, and Department of Water Resources. And these public negotiations have been taking place related to Delta conveyance between July and November 2019. During that time, the focus was sort of an opt-in approach where agencies that wanted to participate in the project would opt into participating in the project. On November 15th, an agreement in principle was reached, but not all of the public water agencies supported the particular agreement in principle that was reached. So on December 20th, DWR presented a sixth offer, and that contained a shift to an opt-out approach where all the public water agencies with an existing contract with the state for State Water Project water would have to opt out if they don't want to participate in the project, as opposed to opting in. So right now, the public water agencies are evaluating this new offer and concept, and we anticipate that there will be future negotiations to work out details on this. So last but not least, next steps for our agency. Staff will submit comments on the Notice of Preparation document by March 20th. Staff will continue to monitor Delta conveyance-related activities. Staff will continue to participate in ongoing public water agency, DWR, public negotiation processes. We also anticipate asking the board to approve the Delta Conveyance Finance Authority Joint Powers Authority amendments in March. So that'll be coming soon. We also anticipate returning to the board when a new agreement in principle is reached on the cost-benefit allocation and is available for the board's consideration. I don't have a date for that yet, but we look forward to coming back on that. And we also anticipate returning to the board when additional funding and financing information is available. We anticipate there will be additional funding needs and information on, let's see, sorry, a little behind here. Future project financing issues, bond issuance and timing, and some of the other financial issues are likely pending, and we would anticipate eventually needing to address that stuff and sharing it with the board. So that was an extremely high flyover view of what's going on with the Delta Conveyance project, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Questions or comments from the board?
I have some comments. So thank you, Ms. Heides, for the presentation. I had asked for this to be put on the agenda because when Catherine Mallon addressed our board, she was addressing the really, really high-level politics of what's going on with the Delta Conveyance. But I thought it was very important for the board to understand what's going on more in the calendar and the budgets and to see what is operationally occurring right now. So I highly encourage everyone, go to the website, dcdca.org, and check through the presentation for the Design and Construction Authority. Each month it's updated. That's the formal presentation that Catherine Mallon, as Executive Director, gives to her board. And there's so much valuable information in her presentations. And it really, I think any one of us serving as a director on a water board where we're reliant on the Delta, you really need to understand what's going on with the whole program. You can also go to the Finance Authority section, but you'll find a lot of boring stuff there. But so I'm really trying to steer people toward the Design and Construction Authority to really know what's going on. Also, as Laura mentioned, I represented the board yesterday down at Santa Clara Valley Water District and had delivered some prepared comments during the scoping meeting. They had a handout here, which I'd like to circulate, which shows visually the two different routes through the Delta that they're considering. The Central Tunnel route is more direct and lower cost. The Eastern Tunnel corridor pretty much follows what was supposed to be the old peripheral canal. And I much prefer the Eastern Corridor one. This is personal opinion, even though it might be more expensive, because I feel it's less disruptive to the internal Delta communities. So I wanted you to just to see a visual of that, and we'll pass it the other way. There were about 20 people that made comments during the evening meeting yesterday, and I'll group them. It was Zone 7 and ACWD that made positive comments. The executive director of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group made very nice comments in support of the Delta Conveyance. The national representative of OE3 and the local representatives of OE3, I think there were 3 people, national, state, and local, that made comments in support. Other labor groups made supportive comments. And then the Sierra Club had 3 different people who spoke, all very negative. All of the other environmental groups that we're familiar with also spoke in very negative terms. There wasn't one environmental group that said anything positive. So that was the divide in the room. I will tell you, there was one gentleman who brought 2 very cute daughters to the meeting, and both of them made presentations. One was 10 and the other was 6. And the 10-year-old actually gave a much better presentation than her father, who's a scientific engineer. But he was speaking on behalf of the environmental community as well. But terrific presentation from these 2 young girls at the meeting. I was very impressed, and we gave them an applause, too, because you just don't see that very often in a public meeting. And, yeah, that about summarizes that meeting. There were, and we had 3 directors from Santa Clara Valley Water District that did not make comments, but we were able to chat for a while there. The new headquarters for the Design and Construction Authority and also for the Finance Authority is the Park Tower building in downtown Sacramento, right next to the main library. Our new Aqua headquarters is in the same building as well, so just in case you want to know that. And, it's, in case you have any friends in the industry, it's becoming one of the hottest employers in downtown Sacramento. And these are premium jobs, all kinds of engineering and software and planning. It's just really taking off. So that summarizes my comments.
Thank you, and thank you for attending the meeting on behalf of the agency.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions for staff on this?
I'd like to thank Director Sethy for making the notes, and I note that the timeline on their chart shows that they're being completed in 2022. Building up a staff, which is going to be a big, major fixed cost, and this $82 million they've talked about currently. But with promised 10 years of litigation before they can do any work at all, that same staff will still have a burn rate that will be a multiple of the dollar amounts available. It'll be interesting to see how much will be requested to kick in to cover the ongoing cost of this wonderful staff that's being assembled while the litigation proceeds.
Well, let me answer quickly that budget is going to expand up to about $320 million by 2022 from the $80 million or so that's committed right now.
Yeah.
So it's going to more than triple, almost quadruple. And I know Mr. Shaver's planning on bringing forward later this spring the financing things that we have to discuss. I don't want to go into
Talk
that.
at that time.
But it will be forthcoming here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for staff? Hearing none, I believe you have another item, General Manager?
Yes, there are 3 more
Okay.
General Manager report items. The second one involves an update on the Paradise, California disaster, and our Manager of Operations and Maintenance, Kurt Arenz, will tell you what that's about.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. It's my honor tonight to inform the board that we received a letter of appreciation from the Paradise Irrigation District, thanking us for our support of the agency and the community affected by the November 2018 Camp Fire. Remember, we sent 2 utility workers to assist in the recovery efforts. Along with the letter of appreciation, we received a resolution of appreciation that was adopted by their board. Very nice framed plaque and resolution. But one of the nice additions they sent along to us was a booklet of thank you letters written by the community. Some of it's kids, some of it's adults, families. So they're hand-printed letters that they bound up and sent us. So I will pass this over and just encourage you to take a quick look at it. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. I think you'll find those letters to be heartwarming. It's real people experiencing, real tragedy. Third item involves good news. Ms. Heides will tell you about a grant.
So I'm pleased to share that on January 24th, the district was informed that we received a preliminary grant award for up to $500,000 for the district's alternative update and model upgrade project. It may sound familiar because the board approved us applying for the grant in October. So this project will upgrade the district's existing groundwater model to inform the alternative update that will include improvements previously identified by the district while incorporating the recommended actions from the Department of Water Resources. The upgraded model will also be utilized as a planning tool for ongoing management of the groundwater basin under current and expected future conditions. So we're excited to share that good news.
That is good news. So the last item, this is a little more lengthy, so I apologize, but it involves some bond initiatives that are being discussed in Sacramento. And for the directors that are on the LICA committee, you know that there are a number of these proposals being discussed and potentially developed in the legislature, ultimately for a state general obligation bond initiative to help fund the governor's water resiliency plan, water portfolio, as well as potentially parks, fire protection, forest, and other state needs. As the legislative session is just beginning, it's unclear which, if any, of these proposals will ultimately prevail. But I think from, say, an outsider perspective, most people are referring to SB 45 by Senator Allen, which is called the Wildfire Prevention, Safe Drinking Water, Drought Preparation, and Flood Protection Bond Act of 2020 as a placeholder for all of these discussions. So SB 45, as it currently exists, calls for a $5.51 billion GO bonds to be issued by the state. And I just wanted to review some of the general provisions, some of the provisions that could be applicable to and benefit ACWD. There's a number of planned projects that we have that could potentially benefit. And then I have a question for the board, really to see if staff should be working with our Sacramento representative, Jonathan Clay, to engage in this process earlier than what we've done in the past to potentially influence the discussions that are going on in Sacramento. And I've got some thoughts about one way we could go. This isn't on the agenda, so what I'm kind of just looking for when I get to that point of the discussion is just sort of head nods, like, does this sound okay? Because this is kind of the path that staff is thinking about taking. So as all general obligation bonds have, this one has a number of general provisions, usually the typical stuff, 5% for grant program administration, no more than 5% of the cost. Looks like this might be a little higher than I've seen in the past, but at least 35% of the funds need to go for projects to provide benefits to disadvantaged communities, and up to 5% of the funds may be used for community access projects. Staff reviewed the latest bill language, and there is funding that could be applicable to ACWD. For example, there's $2.2 billion for wildfire prevention, drought, or other natural disaster prevention, and community resilience from climate change impacts. There's $1.47 billion included for providing safe drinking water and protecting water supply and water quality from climate risks. $620 million for protecting fish and wildlife from climate risks. $80 million for GSAs for monitoring equipment, including stream gauges, well meters, and the construction of monitoring wells. And then there's also funding in there related to pre-hazard mitigation. It has some language that calls out special districts, among others, as being eligible for grants related to electrical microgrids, distributed generation and storage systems, etc. And this could be related to, say, the PG&E PSPS outage events, so more resilience in that arena. ACWD has several planned projects or is experiencing issues that may align with SB 45's goals of climate resilience, water quality, etc. A sampling of these projects, just to refresh your memory. Los Vaqueros reservoir expansion is potentially eligible. The Niles Cone groundwater wells evaluation that we're planning on doing. Our wells are getting older. Supply wells for the Newark desal plant, as the existing aquifer reclamation program wells are also getting older. Watershed protection for water quality. Sounds like that might be an N3 Ranch related issue, but we'll have to wait and see. Vallecito's Channel, which is a big issue for us. We have money in the CIP, but it's probably ultimately going to take a lot more to address that issue. AMI potentially could be somewhat funded by money available. Emergency supply wells, groundwater basin flow model upgrades, invasive species, including quagga mussel inspection funding or other invasive species that could impact steelhead. My understanding is that there is an invasive plant that there is concern about in Alameda Creek called arundo. Anyway, so there's potential opportunities there. So as I mentioned, Jonathan Clay, our Sacramento representative, has informed me that ACWD could engage early and take a position on this. To do so, though, what staff would recommend would be for us to develop some resiliency bond principles that align with both our plans and could be applied to SB 45, as well as the governor's proposal in the budget or any future assembly proposal, because nothing has come out of the assembly yet. But there are those that think that there will be a competing bond measure that comes out of the assembly. And then if so, we would then take our policy proposals that would apply regardless of any ultimate funding vehicle and then frame it in a letter to the ACWD delegation. So this would be our assembly members and senators, and then CC the broader Bay Area coalition of legislators. This would give us maximum ability to engage on whatever comes out. But again, since this issue is not on the agenda, I was just kind of looking to see if there are nods for staff to begin moving forward on this process. And if so, what we could do is we could draft a letter that kind of aligns the policy principles with ACWD's interests, and then perhaps bring that back to the board in March to get your ultimate concurrence, as there are pros and cons of engaging. Staff already frequently finds itself taking trips to Sacramento, and certainly this wouldn't decrease those efforts. But this would be an opportunity, potentially, for us. The other alternative is continue monitoring the legislation and like we typically do, and then keep the LICA committee and the board informed as appropriate. But I thought it would be a good exercise for us to at least draft a letter and bring it back to the board for your review in March. You can't really engage too much on this item, sorry, but there's you could look at the letter and then engage. We'll have it on the agenda.
I could think of some
It's a no-regret strategy.
I could think of some additional projects to add to the list for meeting our long-term needs. But did the word public benefit come into the language of this bond issue, which made it so difficult to get rational scoring in the last effort?
No, I didn't see it. I didn't see the similar sort of scoring or prioritization approach that, say, SB1 had with the reservoir fund, the dam funding. So it's a sort of a regular competitive grant process. And the criteria to prevail, though, will ultimately get developed by the state agencies that will be administering the grant programs.
No need to repeat my pet projects or dreams.
So I'm not seeing any head shaking, no, so I'll proceed accordingly. Thank you. So that's the last of the general manager's reports for this evening.
Okay, so let's move to item 7, director's comments. I do have a request for the directors to be more concise today because we have 2 closed session items that I am projecting to have, at least one of them will have a long and lively discussion. So with that request, Director Wee, I think you have 4 meetings.
I had a number of meetings with Director Sethy was at the first.
Item 7.1 we can skip because Director Weed and I gave a report last month.
Okay.
The meeting we attended was the day before our board meeting.
All right. 7.2.
So I'll take the lead on that. Director Weed and I both attended. Me as the elected person from the Alameda County Special Districts Association, and Director Weed as my alternate. And to give you an update, City of Fremont was the first of the cities in the county to, by the way, this is for the County of Alameda Countywide Oversight Board, which was set up to resolve the disposition of all the old redevelopment agencies in the county. And the reason the special districts are involved, the community colleges, cities, we are beneficiaries of the disillusionment of the old redevelopment agencies because we're getting money back from the cities. So John and I are representing all of the special districts in the county, and they all have an interest in the reimbursements that are coming back. So in addition to the cities that were issued their last and final recognized obligation payments last year and that were approved by the Department of Finance, those cities were Berkeley, Livermore, Newark, and Union City. So we're all clear in southern Alameda County. I had 2 requests from the Special Districts Association members, which was to find out what the longevity of this county-wide oversight board would be, because one by one cities are clearing their ROPS. But as Director Weed and I learned, the City of Oakland will not be clearing themselves up perhaps until the year 2040 or 2050. And the City of Hayward, the Mayor of Hayward is our chair of this oversight board, and she had to acknowledge that they won't be clear until probably the year 2035. So the City of Oakland has serious fiscal issues to deal with. The City of Hayward has some issues as well. But pretty much every other city in the county should be cleared up over the next couple of years, or I think by 2024 everyone is clear. So we as special districts, if you just want to take out that piece of the reimbursements, we've received about $12 million back, and there's about another $9 to $10 million still to come to those special districts. The other question or request from the Special Districts Association I put in the form of a proposal at the end of the meeting. It was seconded by Supervisor Carson, and that was to put on our website, which you can look up. Just look up County of Alameda Countywide Oversight Board. Put in layman's language, in layman's terms, what it is that this group is doing. Because we have a lot of elected people in the Special Districts Association that simply were not around when old redevelopment agencies existed, don't understand the transition that happened, don't even know what the obligations are of the cities back to the special districts. So I made this proposal that we have some very clear layman's language and we're going to review that as members with time to provide comments back, and then they'll post it. We don't want to get into a Brown Act violation, so they're working with us individually. So that's the report on that. John, Federal Affairs?
Hi. Federal Affairs Committee meeting met in Sacramento. The first meeting in the new offices in the Pacific Tower, about 2 blocks from the former offices. And the Aqua East, which is in Washington, D.C., has their meeting this coming in about 2 weeks, the end of February, and we will continue there. There is efforts to get out a new WRDA bill and to renew the WIN legislation, which is really a bond insurance fund. Efforts to get the tax exemption programs for water conservation projects and facilities is back in the works, and now that the Democrats have control, that the name Huffman on the bill will no longer be the kiss of death. Everyone agreed to it, they just didn't like the author. Some didn't like the author. So I hope to go to that. I'll be going to the Aqua East meeting, and we wrap up the federal affairs in one day. So next is Santa Barbara.
Yes, 7.4 Cal T-Cell conference.
7.4 was the Cal D-Cell, of which our general manager is the chair or executive director now. We have a paid executive director, and we have the president of the board, which is Robert Shaver. And that was a 2-day meeting. Excellent technical reports, some world leaders in it. We had a tour of the Santa Barbara's latest venture into desal, which appears to be working after some challenges. They ended up putting the pumps for their intakes offshore. Didn't want to have to fight the Coastal Commission putting them onshore. One of these new pumps is broken, but it's under warranty. They're having a big battle with the environmentalist over the type of screen they can put in. Can it be copper nickel, which works very well, but in this massive ocean, putting one piece of metal seems to be a major environmental hurdle. So they're going in with technically less or higher maintenance material, and they're working themselves. This is Santa Barbara's second effort. The first effort, they spent $40 million and produced 40 acre-feet of water. Before they tore it down, I'm told that components of the original plant are now in Santa Barbara, and 1.5 MGD is actually being produced in Saudi Arabia. It was relocated to the Saudi Peninsula. So the game continues. Thank you.
Director Weed and I have been to, I believe, 6 of the 8 Cal D-Cell conferences, and this is the 10th year of Cal D-Cell. I thought this was by far and away the very best one. Just the presentations were all outstanding, and I told some of the organizers on Friday at the conclusion that the presentations right up to the very end were so good, no one wanted to leave early at all. People, were really glued to the presentations. I have brought back a desal cup for my 3 other directors here with a desal pen and the desal program, and I would take some time to actually study what was presented. I'm just going to highlight one thing that came up under the last session, salinity management and water supply for California, because, it's amazing you're in the world of water and yet you don't even understand some of the things that are going on in our state. The Colorado River, along with the State Water Project, are the 2 major water sources for Southern California. And when you think of river water, you think of fresh water, right? But the water that comes down the Colorado River, because of geological formations that go back to the Ice Age, becomes saltier and saltier as it comes down into California, to the point where the salinity levels are higher than our brackish water that we're desalinating right here in Newark. So they have to go through desalting of their own, what you would call fresh water, river water, coming down Colorado River into Lake Mead. And so it's fascinating to see all of the efforts that they're trying to make to desalt their water, but still, and this is why you will notice the water tastes different in Southern California, the target TDS level is 500. Now, Union City on our hardness report was averaging about 140 right now, and maybe we get concerned if it gets up to 200, right? But the target level that they are trying to get down to is 500 from 1400, 1600 levels and stuff like that. Yeah. So they're going through the hoops right now trying to figure out how to desalt their water for the Southern California supply. And one of the really outrageous stories that Director Weed and I heard, Mr. Shaver was not present for that presentation, was how in Santa Clarita they have now banned all water softeners because that was adding salt to their discharge through their sanitary system. And so they're building a $73 million desalination plant for Santa Clarita to save the avocado farmers in the area who do not want water at higher than 100 TDS. So the avocado farmers are not helping in financing any of this. It is entirely on the backs of the ratepayers in the district to put in this desal plant for the benefit of the entire agricultural community, which I just found absolutely outrageous. Could not believe that this is what they're going through. So that's my summary on Cal Desal. It was an excellent conference.
The avocado growers have the strong support of the environmental community. I will leave you with one, if I can add one more vignette or comment. They did a public opinion survey on desalination and found increasing support for it. But in this report, they also noted that 28% of the respondents believed that if we achieved our desalination goals of seawater desalination, we would actually lower the sea level, countering sea level rise.
With that,
so
any other comments?
I have two other things.
Okay.
Mr. Shaver is reminding me that I wanted to make my fellow board members aware of the fact that I was planning on going to the California Water Commission on Wednesday of next week. The Delta Conveyance Finance Authority meeting is on Thursday, and there's some pre-meetings that same Wednesday too that I wanted to attend. But I asked Mr. Shaver if I may make some comments at the commission meeting, because this is one of the agenda items is going to be the annual review of the State Water Project. And having gone through the annual report, and Director Weed and I noticed this last year as well, there's barely a mention of the needs for the North Coast, North Bay, South Bay, and Central Coast aquifers. And so I would like to make a statement, a prepared statement that staff will help me with to the commissioners at that meeting, if I have the approval of my fellow board members.
So from staff's perspective, that's fine. We are working closely with DWR on maintenance and reliability issues of the South Bay Aqueduct. So we would be happy to craft language for Director Sethy that supports in the context of supporting the efforts that staff and DWR staff are already working on, as well as supporting DWR's efforts to manage their assets, which they're working on anyway.
Yeah, and these comments are not meant to be critical in any way. It's meant to be to shed some light for the commissioners on the importance of the need for rehabilitation of each one of these aqueducts. And President Huang, I have one last thing I'd like to bring up, if I may.
Of course.
We had a very important discussion at the last Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee a couple of weeks ago. First, we were looking at Measure L, which the Chamber supported, and then we had an item that was referred by Councilman Vinnie Bacon to the Chamber for our opinion and recommendation, which was what is the Chamber's position on the statewide property tax initiative for the November ballot. Other people call it the split roll tax reform on Proposition 13. So the Chamber put out a formal survey to its members, and it was found to be overwhelmingly no support for the split roll tax because of all the impacts to small businesses. And without going through all the comments that I heard myself, the Chamber is really up in arms about the split roll tax. And so the recommendation of our Government Affairs Committee and then the Board of Directors back to the Council is not to support this. But the reason I want to highlight this is that the this is really splitting the community and the state. The Republican Party and all the tax organizations are opposed to this. The Democratic Party and most of our local elected members are very supportive of the split roll tax. And the environmental organizations are also very involved with this as well. So people are trying to choose their sides because you can find yourself with your friends as your enemies now on this issue. The reason I'm bringing it to the board's attention is because Tom Handley, director from USD, and I were both present for these discussions, and I asked the question of city staff as to whether special districts would benefit from reform of the split roll tax. And according to the initiative, 40% of the monies would go to schools and 60% to cities, special districts, community colleges. This will come about from the reassessing property values up to market value every 3 years from their current basis right now. So I asked the question whether our special districts would benefit, and the city staff said no, only the special needs special districts. And that didn't square with either Tom or I, so I brought this back to Mr. Wunderlich, and he came to the conclusion, maybe you might want to expand on this, that we may see a 10 to 15% increase in our property tax receipts if the initiative passes, and that would result in $1 million or more of additional revenue to the district.
So we are planning a more detailed presentation to the Finance Committee next week on this issue, but it's our interpretation that the additional tax revenue from the split roll initiative would be allocated in essentially the same manner as existing property taxes. And that means we think about a 10 to 15% increase in the district's 1% tax allocation and a shifting of how much of our state water project override tax is collected from commercial versus residential properties, because residential properties would not be affected. And so relatively, we would collect more of the same amount of money from businesses than from residential properties, because the statewide override tax is a set dollar amount.
So the chamber represents close to 8,500 individuals or businesses in the community, and it pretty near unanimously is opposed to the reform of Prop 13, and this is why it's creating this cleavage in the community right now, because the electeds are pretty much the Democratic Party and supporting it, and the business community is overwhelmingly saying no.
Thank
One
you.
more quick. There is a conference with the Water Now Alliance, which on the staff now is our former general manager, Walt Wadlow. This will be out of state in Philadelphia. They have funding for, and board members are encouraged to apply. It'll help assist in the plane fare and one-night lodging. I've attended in the past. I've never billed the district for my expenses. I have received compensation, but I would ask for consideration for credit for attending a Water Now Alliance on the reimbursable pay, and I believe that may require board action for out-of-state activities.
It would, and we can place it on the March board meeting agenda.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments from the directors? All right, hearing none, let's move on to closed session. General Manager, would you do the honor of reading it out?
Certainly. There are two closed sessions scheduled for this evening. Item 8.1 is pursuant to California Government Code section, and there was a small typo on the agenda that I will correct as I read it, 54956.9D4. So the D was missing. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, one potential case. And then item 8.2 is pursuant to California Government Code section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators. The property is the N3 Cattle Company, consisting of 131 parcels and approximately 50,535 acres in Alameda, Santa Clara, San Joaquin, and Stanislaus counties. And the assessor's parcel numbers were furnished by the owner's representative and are attached to this agenda. The agency negotiators are Robert Shaver and Ed Stevenson.
All right, and with that is what, 8:31? That's adjourned to the administrative conference room for the closed session?
Correct.
It's allowed.
All right, are we ready to start? Okay, time is 10:20. I'll call meeting back from closed session. General Manager, would you report back, please?
Sure.
Or would it be the council?
I wasn't sure who was going to do it, but I'll give it a shot. So the board met in closed session, and for item 1, pursuant to California Government Code section 54956.9D4, a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, one potential case, pursuant to California Government Code section 54956.8, and the board took no action. Oh wait, I started reading the second one. One potential case, period, the board took no action. Then, for item 8.2, pursuant to California Government Code section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators. The property is N3 Cattle Company, consisting of 131 parcels and approximately 50,535 acres in Alameda County, Santa Clara County, San Joaquin County, and Stanislaus County. Assessors' parcels numbers were furnished by owner's representative and are attached to the board agenda. The agency negotiators are Robert Shaver and Ed Stevenson, and the board provided direction to its negotiators. And that's the closed session report.
Thank you. Then with that, I'll call the meeting adjourned.